Hey guys, so it's the middle of June and it is hot, and so we've got some repair work to do here on the Bentgrass. We've got a whole lot of dog spots that have come up here in the last few weeks because of the heat. And I've got a section back here that I want to till up and replant some Bentgrass because it's just so tore up from the dogs over the years. So that's what we're going to work on today. It's just doing a little bit of maintenance on the Bentgrass. Alright, so as you can see, this section back here is just a total mess. It's got a bunch of holes in it from the dogs digging over the years, and it's gotten to the point where I cannot get my reel mower through here very easily, and so I'm ready to just till it up and start over. A lot of the grass died here as well from doing the sulfentrazone applications for the goose grass earlier in the spring. There's quite a bit of that here, so a lot of it died, and so it's just time to till it up and start over. I need to move some sprinkler heads over here into these corners as well, that way they'll start getting some better coverage. So I'm going to show you guys how to plant Bentgrass, and I know this right here is not the most ideal location, but the principles are still the same. So hang along and I'll show you how to plant some Bentgrass. So I got a few things that go on in here. I've got a couple of sprinkler heads, but I've got a couple of valve boxes. Also, my main water line comes in back here for the sprinkler system, so I've got a lot to deal with back here. But all I want to do is just till it up a little bit and get it cleaned up, get it level again before we seed it. And also want to move a sprinkler head in here. But if you don't have one of these, this is a Dithiopyr rake. These things work really well for getting stuff like this cleaned up and level. It's got a bunch of little teeth. It's kind of like a bunch of little plow discs in a rake. And yeah, it works great for dethatching, but it works really well for moving this dirt around and getting it cleaned up, getting the rocks out of it and all that kind of stuff. So, highly recommend using one of these. So something else you'll notice is if you're doing like a renovation and you got a bunch of this old grass in your dirt like this, it's actually easier if you till it up and let it dry out in the sun for several hours. Then all this grass will start to kind of separate and come out of this dirt. Otherwise you just keep moving mud around and clumps around and it just wears you out. So what I like to do is till it all up, let it dry in the sun the best you can, and then start working some of this grass out of it. You have a lot more success doing that than you will, raking it when it's wet, keep rolling it, trying to get it smooth and all that. It's just hard to do with all these roots in there. So give some time to dry and you'll have better luck with it. So you can see you can get everything pretty level, even with the leaf rake. It takes a lot of times of going over this over and over to get all that grass out, especially if you're doing a renovation. But you can get it pretty level, but you can get it even better with a leveling rake. And so these things run for nearly $200 online. I built this one for about $70, and it's bigger and stronger than the ones you can get online. So this is a leveling rake. So what it is, it's got four pieces of metal that are all on the same plane, so it helps level your lawn from one side to the other, so that way you don't get the variations and the dips that you get with a rake. Even with a landscape rake, they're 3 foot wide or so, but even with that, the teeth, it can make things uneven. So having a leveling rake like this makes all the world of difference if you want your lawn to be flat, especially if you're going to be real mowing. So I'm going to show you how this levels this out. So what I have is, from my son's truck and everything, I've got a bunch of unevenness in the dirt. So by taking this and working it back and forth, you'll start to see that these bars, they fill in all the holes in the dirt and just start to level the surface out really smooth. So you just work this thing back and forth like this. And what this will also do is it'll show you the high spots and the low spots. So the high spots will be smooth, low spots will either have a dip in them, or you'll see grass in it, or some loose dirt because it didn't get smoothed over by these metal pieces. So it's real good at giving you a good indication as where you are on level with your yard. So you can hear I still got some rocks in there and some debris I need to get out, but that's just part of seeding, you know. When you got to work the dirt, it takes a while. You just got to go over it a couple times, get everything worked out. So that's what we're going to keep working on. All right, so we got a lot of this cleaned up and ready. We spent the time to get rid of the big rocks and a lot of the old grass that was in here from when we tilled it up. And when it comes to rocks, just get rid of the big stuff. Don't kill yourself trying to get rid of every little pebble, because whenever we seed this and put fertilizer down, I want to come through with a water weighted roller, and this will push a lot of those pebbles down into the dirt, and that's fine because the grass will grow up around it, and over time you'll develop that thatch layer. So as long as you don't have big stuff sticking up that when you come through with a reel it's going to catch it and mess up your reel, it's fine. So don't kill yourself doing that. No one likes spending the time doing dirt work as it is, and when you got to deal with all these rocks everywhere, especially if you're doing a large renovation, you just don't have time for all that. So just know it's not going to affect the outcome. It'll be fine. Just get the big stuff out. And so another thing is make sure you spend the time to get all your edges right and all your transitions right, because whenever you till this hard edge up against your existing lawn, you'll sometimes have a hard dip come off of there. So when you're mowing, you'll have that hard dip coming off, and then you'll scalp the yard when you come off the other side there. So make sure you take the time to get those transitions real smooth and level, because that is something that no amount of top dressing is going to fix very quickly. So now's the time to do it. It's easy to do, to just take a little extra time and get all your edges and all your transitions smooth the way you want them, and you'll be set for a good seed and a good outcome. Otherwise you're going to completely regret not spending the time doing that. Believe me, I've done it, and it's worth a little extra time. Just make all that right the first time. Alright, so we're finally ready to prep this area for some bentgrass seed. So I'm going to use my dethatch rake to kind of break some of the ground up on top to get ready for that seeding. A lot of it's compacted from us working on it, and the sprinklers have been spraying on it the last couple of days. So I'm going to break that up, and I'm going to use the lawn leveling rake and get everything nice and level before we put that seed down. So you can see how well this dethatch rake works, because it's like a bunch of plow disc. How it just tears up the top a lot better than just a normal rake does. It really gets down into the surface. And what's cool too is if you got a bunch of dirt clods, you can take this and just pound down on them and it'll break them up. So some other key advice I'd give you when you get to this stage is don't spray it down with water and then roll it, or don't roll it and then spray it with water. That step just makes everything compact and get very hard, and it makes it more difficult for your seed to make contact. It makes it harder for you to get things level as well. So watering things is not a way to make things easier. It just makes everything more difficult for you. You have to work twice as hard to get everything level. So really and truly, the more dry you can get this, the easier it is to work, because that dethatch rake will tear everything up. And then you can take your lawn leveling rake and it spreads everything real nice and even because it's dry. Whereas if it's damp, it's going to clump and stick, and it's just a lot more difficult to get things level. So leave it as dry as possible as you can before you do any kind of seeding. And once we throw the seed out, put the fertilizer out, then we'll roll it to make good seed and soil contact, get everything real level and flat. And then you can start your irrigation after that, and everything will come in real nice over time. But it's just unnecessary to just keep rolling it with a roller, because all it does is compact everything and make everything a lot more complicated to get your seed to germinate. Alright, so this stuff here, that's bentgrass seed. You can see how tiny that stuff is. And so it doesn't take much. It just takes about, I think, a pound or so per thousand of seed. So that stuff's really tiny and it goes really quick. So we're going to put some in this little spreader here, spread it out over this little area, and then we'll put some starter fertilizer on it and get it going. I'll drop it. So anytime you put seed out like this, you want to put down a good starter fertilizer. This one's a Scott's brand. I'm not a huge fan of Scott's products, but it's what I can get here locally at the box store. And so the NPK ratio on this is a 24-25-4, and that's important because you want to have high values of nitrogen and phosphorus for starter fertilizer, because nitrogen helps get things going and phosphorus helps stimulate good root growth. And so what I like to do is I like to put down a heavy amount of starter fertilizer on day one, because we've tilled this up, and so we have pulled different depths of soil up to the surface, and so chances are some of the nutrient value in the soil is kind of depleted, and so we can hit it kind of heavy today to get things going. And after about a week, I'll come back in and I'll start spoon feeding every 3 days with more starter fertilizer just to help keep things going. And that's how the golf courses get putting greens to get going. And so I've had good success with that on the Bentgrass. It just keeps spoon feeding it every 3 days, and it really starts to take off pretty quick for you. And you know, you really shouldn't touch fertilizer, but whatever. So now we got our seed and our fertilizer down. Just gonna lightly rake it in. Then we're gonna roll it and get everything nice and flat, and this job's done. So like I said, at this stage, no water, still as dry as can be. Got everything raked in, and so now we're going to push this roller over the surface and get everything flat and level, and then we'll add the water to it. So that's going to do it for putting the Bentgrass seed down over here. And you know, I know this isn't the most ideal situation being underneath this tree, but it's part of my yard that needed repaired, so that's why I wanted to tackle it and get rid of all the holes and the bumps that were over here. I'm real excited to be able to get my reel mower through here again. And so if you're thinking about doing a renovation yourself, the steps are all exactly the same. Till up everything, get all your big debris out, and spend a good amount of time with that lawn leveling rake, getting everything level. And you know, it doesn't have to be as flat as a pool table, but obviously the more time you spend making sure everything's level and you don't have any holes or anything where water's going to gather, then obviously your result's going to be far better. And like I mentioned earlier, don't beat yourself up trying to get rid of every single little rock, because as you can see back here, once we rolled everything in, the little stuff like I mentioned earlier, it all gets pressed in and your surface is flat. So just get rid of the big stuff and everything will come out just fine. And then lastly, make sure you've got a really good starter fertilizer and stay on top of spoon feeding it after about a week, every 3 days, and you'll have good success and keep everything nice and wet for a good couple of weeks while it germinates. So hopefully you learned something here, and you know, hopefully it's something you can take and do something for yourself someday. If you haven't already, subscribe to our channel, like this video, and I think that's going to do it for this one, guys. We'll see you in the next one.